Is July 25th, the year 2001, and we're going to interview Mildred Lowe and John Lowe. And Mildred was one of the first people to start the Madison Township Historical Society. Mildred, would you start right at the beginning, even before the Cedar Grove School was built and given to the Historical Society?
All right, I'll do that. Mrs. Marson was a teacher at the Cheesquake School when I was the vice president of the Cheesquake White Brown PTA. And she had taken my children on a trip. And of course, she said, how did they like the trip? And I said, well, my children see all these articles in our family's farms and attics and houses. And so it doesn't mean as much to them as it does to the new children. And she says, well, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we got all those stuff together and we could have an exhibit?
What year was that, by the way?
1963.
Okay.
So then I got everything, and I said, well, give me a while. So then I went to find out what it was entailed, and I called relatives, friends, talked to John to see if he would help me. And they said, yeah, we'll loan you the stuff to put out an exhibit. So I had a promise that I would have it appraised, I would have it insured, and I would bring it back the very next day. So I only kept it one day. So we got the okay from the PTA that they would pay the insurance. Now we got the insurance. Bill Miller used to be an insurance man throughout the community. He got the appraiser for me, and he insured the articles from the Lloyds of London. I had all the articles in my music studio while we were waiting. Now, in collecting these things, I found that almost every article had a history. It had a story behind it. Some of the things were from Aunt Neely. I got a mortar and pestle.
Aunt Neely
mortar and pestle.
and Aunt Neely
Lamberson. And she told me about that. It came down from the Hawkins family, and it was hand-hewn out of oak tree. And the second thing was a little bank. It looked like an orange. And she told me that that was the last article that ever came out of the Madison Pottery Works. Well, of course, it's ceramic. When they shut down the pottery works and they shut down the kilns, the last heat, they put in 12 of these oranges. 6 of them went to the Van Pelt family, and 6 of them went to the Lamberson family. So there's one in the museum today that belonged to Cornelia Lamberson.
Now, going back to the mortar and pestle, how was that used from Neely Lamberson?
That was used to smash their corn and their grain and anything hard. One other interesting thing about that, they melted beeswax to place on the back or the outside to shine it up and keep it watertight.
Now, they use that for bread, did they, on the mortar and pestle?
Yeah, the grains and everything.
Okay.
A member of the family has that now. That is not in the museum. The member of the family has that in her own private collection.
Now, you used to go to the different schools with the exhibits in your car?
Some of them. You couldn't take the big stuff. If a teacher was having a class and she wanted a couple, yes, I went with the articles. Another interesting article was the music. I had the music from my mother. It was from World War I, and about the music, the history on the music is to get people to buy the Perth Amboy newspaper. They would give out the music as a gift. So if you subscribed to their paper, you got a sheet of music. Now that music is very valuable today, and that's in the museum.
Now, who worked along with you as you were doing this?
My husband and my kids helped me set up the museum. Johnny, well, you remember how many white sheets we put up all over that place?
Oh, I wrote maybe 10 or 20, something like that.
Oh, we had a, we took to school and we put sheets all the way down the sides, and we put sheets over top all of the chairs because they had to be put back for school the same way that we took them down. And what else did we have there? Oh, I went to Mary Brown. And I said, Mary, you have the white brown, Mary Brown, our township clerk. I said, you know, the White Brown School is named after your son. But none of the new students know why. So she got a picture and she wrote the whole history of her son's activities in World War II. And we had that on exhibit.
What honor did he have?
I don't know. I don't remember after
Yeah, this is
quite
50
a few
years, 60 years.
I did read it, and like everybody else, I took it right back to her the next day. We were supposed to get a copy for our files. I do not know if it was ever given to the files. Now, we also got the 1869 Cheesequake Methodist records. I was down filling in for Mrs. Fenwick. Mrs. Fenwick was sick. She was the organist at the Cliffwood Methodist Church there on Cliffwood Avenue. And I was telling Isabel and Buster Ivins what I was going to do. And he says, well, how would you like the church records? I said, wonderful. Besides the articles, it's good to have some written stuff. Well, he gave it to us, and we had it on exhibit, which no one knew existed. And then later on, down the line, he handed it to me, and he said, you know what to do with this, you take it. And just before he died.
Now, how did the Cedar Grove School become the Madison Township Historical Society? What's the story behind that?
All right. We were going from place to place, to different schools. Browntown School we went, that's where I met Marie Gobb. And she told me all about her schooling in Browntown School. Then when I went over to the Willis School in Old Bridge, that's where I met Mrs. Long. Mrs. Long's mother, Mrs. Palmer, was the founder of the first active registered PTA in Madison Township.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, that comes next.
Yeah.
We're on again.
Okay. I also met Mr. Maley in the Willis School. He came to visit from there. Mr. Maley was extremely active with the Mohawk Indians. He tried to help them. They were having a difficult time. He would try to sell their wares and pick up their wares. And they had give him a headdress and made him an honorary chief for all of his work that he did. He, later on, turned that headdress over to the Madison Township Historical Society.
That's why it's from another state, but it relates to Madison Township.
Right. Mr. Maley, when we actually got having lectures, and they brought school children to the school, Mr. Maley used to come dressed up in his headdress and a pair of fatigues and walk around, and the little kids used to think he was an Indian. But he was very helpful that way. We did that. When we went to Memorial School, I've got to mention it wasn't all the old families. We met Lenore Panous. Lenore Panous was brand new to the community. She was anxious to get in. She jumped in with both feet, and she became the recording secretary. She made up the minute books because we were just taking minutes on pieces of paper. Everybody jumped in and did something. There was no official, your president. Albia acted as vice president. I acted as president. But it was really not completely formalized.
Can you tell us about how the deed to the property was given over to the Historical Society for
All right. We know we needed a place to meet permanently. You couldn't keep jumping from place to place, because when we went to Old Bridge, we lost the people from Lawrence Harbor. When we went to Lawrence Harbor, we lost people. So we decided it was either going to be the Morristown School we would ask the Board of Education for, or the Cedar Grove School. I attended a Board of Education meeting. Carol Casabucky was one of the board. Johnny Partridge was one of the board. Mr. Kerr was one of the board. And I don't quite remember all the rest, I'm sorry to say. And after discussing it, it was decided the Cedar Grove School was the last one-room schoolhouse. And economically, we have to see if we could afford it and build that, and make that into a museum. But it was going to be a place where the children could come and see what a one-room schoolhouse looked like.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. What wasn't the original intent to have it as a one-room schoolhouse set up so they could see what the one-room schoolhouse
was? It was
was?
Going to be preserved as a one-room schoolhouse. Temporarily, we put up all the articles that were given by the old people who donated them. We had to keep them someplace. And like I said, my music studio was getting a little crowded and I needed it. So yes, the big thing was to make a bridge. The old families, the children could go in there and say, see what my grandfather made, see what my grandmother did. But the new children could go there and say, look, I wonder how they did that. So it was kind of a bridge between the old and the new, that both people and both groups could enjoy and have a good time visiting us. And when we went to, now how it became the Madison Township Historical Society was named Madison Township from the very beginning because it was Madison Township. And we were representing not one little area, we were trying to represent articles from all over the community. So that's how the Madison Township Historical Society came into play.
And today, Madison Township is now Old Bridge Township.
Right. And we, as far as I know, it was the decision to leave the name Madison Township because anybody looking for their roots would remember the name Madison Township more than Old Bridge Township because that was just changed. So that was one of the big things. Now, one of the biggest helps to me was John Partridge. The very first thing he did was call me after the exhibit, and he said, Millie, I've got a book for you. And I said, what is it? It's a publication from the government that said how to form your local historical societies. All right, John gave me this book. It was published by the government. You could buy it through, you know, they had all these publications in Madison, Wisconsin that you could send money in and get. It was one of them, and it went in detail, step by step, how to form a historical society.
How much was the Historical Society charged for the school and the property?
$1 a year when the board told us we could have the Cedar Grove School. That went on, and I'll tell you, Mr. Smith, the lawyer for the Board of Education, he did our incorporation papers, and he wrote the first donation slips that we have. I think they're still using the donation slips today. But the corporation papers, I understand, had to be all changed. So when Alvia had the dedication of the school, they had to, the old incorporation papers were done away with. They had to do new ones. I'm not sure what the whole procedure was about that and why they had to be done over. You'd have to ask her about
So
that.
you have roughly an acre and the school that was donated.
I don't know. They didn't measure the deed. I do know there was some throwback about it. We should go back to the original owner. But because we were a historical society, and because we were giving free, it was educational purposes, because the children were coming there to learn about their community and everything, there was nothing done with that.
The original owner, was that Eifert?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right now it's too many years. You'd have to go back. And I guess you're not going to be able to do anything. They told me the minutes of the first 5 years that I did it, they can't find the minutes, so I don't know. Also, there's another thing to say about in the very beginning. We had a write-up in the Middlesex County PTA magazine. The White and Brown School was the only school in Middlesex County that had a celebration of the centennial of New Jersey. She had come to me and asked me to take pictures. I said, yeah, it would be good for the community and good people. I was active in PTA. It was good for PTA. Take all the pictures she wanted. So they did put an article in there. I don't know whether that magazine is still there or not.
Tell me a little bit about the fundraising that you had when you first started, right at the very beginning.
All right. Well, first, there was nothing. Marion Smith donated the paint for the outside, and she donated paint for the inside, I think, too. And she got Brownie to check out the electric and stuff on that. John Partridge and his brother painted the whole outside. John and Bill Holden painted the inside. Ceilings and all inside. Now, Bill Holden was a young man. He worked at the park. Bill Holden used to take his bedroll, and when he got done painting, he used to sleep in there, get up in the morning, go to work, and come back, and they'd paint again until they got it done. So that's the story. Bill Holden worked very, very hard for a young man on that to see that we got there. Yeah, then the next thing we had was open house. And all the people came. They wanted to see what was being done and what would be done.
A lot of people?
Local people, yes. We met a lot of people. And that's how Mr. Hauser ended up donating back the original school stove. That's in there.
Big potbelly
Yeah,
stove.
later on, yeah. He came back and gave the society that. Now, the biggest money maker at that time, we had a flea market. We had it over in the Cedar Ridge High School parking lot. Well, John, you want to tell them what you made the signs at?
You better tell me, because my voice doesn't carry that far.
Okay. He took bushel basket lids, because we didn't have any money to buy signs, and he made up signs, and we put basket lids all over the township saying flea market. Now, we only charged $5 for a thing. That was the first time we found Coca-Cola would give you a thing to sell juice from. We had to guarantee the high school that nobody would bother the high school. So we had two people sitting right in front. So besides having the food tables, we had to place two people in front of the door. And every person who took a table was given 2 green tickets, so that if they had to go to the ladies' room or the men's room, they had to show that ticket to be able to walk into the high school, because we didn't want anybody to disturb it or do something that they wasn't supposed to.
How many vendors did you have outside?
I don't know about the vendors, but what we did to raise money, extra money, we charged 25 cents for every car that went in there. The door of the school was left open, and there was 1 or 2 people in the museum. And and we would stop and ask them, we would tell them we needed a quarter for parking, and that when they got through, if they'd like to go over to see the museum and see what we're trying to do, they could see where their money was going to. I think outside, we must have had about 600 cars, because I divided the quarters to see how many, every quarter was a car. Nobody resented it. They were more than glad. Another thing, when we went into the Cedar Grove School to start our meetings, that's when Celeste and Rose Wenzel came. Isabel Basia picked up Mary Blahoda, and they started to come study. Now, Celeste, Rose Wenzel, and Mrs. Chamberlain used to have card parties in their houses. And they'd have 5 or 6 tables in their house. At least twice a month they would do that.
As a moneymaker?
As a moneymaker. They were charged $2 a piece to come to the card party. Because I only had one here, because I had a lot of my twins and stuff at that time. Put peppermints in the middle, and there was, they played different kind of cards, and then we had one table just for games, checkers or what have you. And we would serve them a donut and coffee or tea or juice, whatever they wanted, and that money was turned over to the Historical Society to use. Now, Marion Smith acted as the treasurer from the beginning, because she had, you know, she donated the money for the heater. And she didn't donate it, she loaned it to us because we didn't have any money and it was very, very cold. Otherwise we wouldn't have been able to have the meetings in there. But I met a lot of people over the years that were very, very nice. A lot of nice children came in and out. And I think it was doing what it was supposed to do. I was so glad that they were able to expand it. Made me feel good.
Now, where do you think the Historical Society should go? In what direction now?
They should stay for doing for the children of the community. Because that bridge still has to be made. With the influx of new residents into this community, there is no connection.
You mentioned Mary Brown donating.
Yeah, Mary Brown acted as a director at the beginning, and just before they dedicated the Cedar Grove School, Mary had the front all redone, topsoil, rhododendron put in, she put in the railroad ties, she had Manzo put blue stone all in the back, and had it kind of made a little pretty for the dedication. Now, the coal shed in the back, nothing was wasted. We used everything to make money. So anybody that had anything they didn't want, they dropped off to the thrift shop. And we hung dish clothes, and we hung dishes, and we put stuff out there. And we was making at least $25, $30 a month maybe on the thrift shop. And then after a while it petered off. And so we didn't do that. The girl, Jean Roberts used to help out there all the time. She was from Lawrence Harbor. By the way, she's in a nursing home in Pennsylvania now. And another thing we had was an auction. We got an auctioneer to donate his time, and the township donated their room where everybody holds meetings and things. And everybody would drop off stuff that they didn't want. We had glasses and we had little furniture. We made a little stuff. And then the auctioneer would come and we'd give people numbers. And they would come to the auction, and then we'd have to run the stuff up to the auctioneer. John, I'm telling you, he ran and ran and ran and ran and ran. And then when we got done, we used to have to put the whole building back the way it was.
All right.
And the last thing we did was, the auction was, we had to put the room back the way it was. And if it wasn't for my husband and my family and the ones that came to work, it was hard to do because it all had to be done in one day. Now the fun part, we used to have our Christmas parties down to Bucky Smith's in Kingsburg. And he was noted for giving reasonable prices for the dinners, and so we could make extra money. We had door prizes, and then we used to sell chances on stuff that was given to us. I used to play my accordion and sing so that we had entertainment, and did that. And we did that every year for quite a while.
Yes.
Until they decided to, then they did stuff in their own house, in their houses. So after that, once I stopped working at thrift shop and I had other responsibilities of the family, I couldn't go over there because I had Renee later. I had my mother living with me for a year, very ill. Then I had Grandpa Lush for 4 years with me. We had John's Aunt Agnes with us for over a year, year and a half. Plus Renee being born, it was impossible, and my family came first.